Hello, welcome to the Bibble IT 7680 training video for the Microsoft Windows 7 exam. This is section 2, module 2. This is continuing our series on deploying Windows 7. Today we're looking at preparing a system image for deployment. If you remember from our previous module, we discussed how you would build a reference workstation computer and then capture that back into an image file based on the WIM image format. The WIM image format, just to recap quickly, is a file-based imaging system rather than disk-based. That means that you can actually open that up, look at the contents of the folders and files inside it, and make changes where necessary. So things we're going to be looking at today is actually the process of mounting, as it's called, or in reality opening the image, how to apply changes, the sorts of changes we're able to make, applying basic Windows patches, installing basic applications, modifying Windows 7 features, and configuring unattended XML files. And then lastly, how to commit and write back the image. There are two tools that we'd use to do this. One of them, ImageX, we've come across already. ImageX is the tool that we used in the previous module for actually capturing our WIM image file. And then DISM. The difference between these two is that ImageX will allow you to open and commit changes back to WIM files. However, it won't let you make changes to the actual Windows installation that's contained inside those files, whereas DISM understands Windows inside the image. What I mean by that is that with DISM there's certain command lines that will let you get information about the WIM file, such as its region, location, what installed applications there are, etc. Whereas with ImageX you would just be able to browse the files that were on the hard drive at the time that you captured it. So let's have a quick look at the syntax here. For mounting an image with ImageX, you've got a /info setting which will give you a little bit of information about your WIM image file. You've then got /mount, and then you use image and path. Path is the path that you want the WIM file loaded up into on your hard drive. By default, ImageX will mount the images as read-only, and you have to use this /mount_rw switch before you can make any changes to your file. It's worth noting that if you do open that with just /mount, you can make changes, but when you try and save them back, they won't go back into the WIM format. DISM, slightly more complex syntax here. You use /wiminfo space and then /wimfile : and then there's no spaces in here. With ImageX, you'd just be able to put in C/test and then the name of your WIM file. Whereas with this you need to do /wimfile : no spaces, C, etc, etc. We've got our switch for mounting our WIM, which is /mount-wim, and then again we use our /wim file. And in both of these, I should say, we've got the ability to pick which of our images inside the WIM that we're looking at. With DISM, it's /index, whereas with ImageX, again, slightly more simple, we just put the number that we're looking for. DISM will mount by default in write mode. You can use the /read-only to specify not to do that and to mount them as read-only. And then let's have a look at the commands for saving that. With ImageX, we've got a /unmount, a path, and then if we have made any changes that we want to save, we can use the /commit. And then with DISM, we've got three switches here. We've got commit changes, which lets us just do a save without actually unmounting the WIM. We've got /unmount_wim, which takes saves the changes and takes the image offline. And then clean up WIM is to be used when something's gone wrong. It'll go through memory and unload anything that's not being used anymore. It won't unload any cleanly or correctly mounted WIM files, but it will tidy up anything from any instances that have gone a bit wrong. So let's have a look at some of those in action. If we remember, this is our server computer that we captured our image back to in the location of C, then images, then win7image.wim. And I've gone ahead and created a folder here called mounted. This is the empty folder that we're going to mount these images into. So if I open our deployment toolkit, which is of course installed as part of the WAIK, and run it as administrator, if we do ImageX/info, and then the path to our image, you can see this has gone and produced an XML-like file that's got a whole bunch of stuff in here about our image file. So telling us that it's Windows Operating System Professional, it's client, the HAL is the APCI, language is American, it's version 6.1, build 7600, etc. So now if we want to actually mount that file, if we do /ImageX/mount, then the path to our image, then image number 1, and then we're going to mount that to C mounted. And you can see that's running through here with a little progress bar, and we'll see you when it's completed. And that's gone through about 1:30 for our 2 gig image file. Now if we look in our C mounted, this is our Windows 7 folder structure as it was at the time the machine was captured. So we can have a look in program files. These are all the things that are installed. We can browse the Windows folder or the user profile path and make any changes if we need to. Now in my case, don't forget I didn't mount that as writable, it's only mounted as read-only, but that doesn't stop you actually making any changes to folders in here. It just means you won't be able to commit to those and save them back into the WIM file. So let's unmount that image now. So it's image x / unmount, and then we just need to give it a path there, and it knows what image is mounted there and goes and saves it back into the WIM file. Except in my case, I'm not saving any changes, A, because I didn't mount it as writable, and B, because I didn't use the /commit switch on the end here to force it to save my changes. You can see that's completed. I have got a little error here. That's just because I've actually still got my C mounted folder open. So if I come out of that, run through the command again, and this time we've successfully unmounted the image. So if I go look in here, that's now completely empty. So we're just going to repeat the process using dism. So this time to do our info, we want dism /get wim info /wim file : path to our wim, no spaces in this. And then we want wim #1 inside that file, and you can see we get pretty much the same information out: our version, HAL, architecture type, size, etc. This time it's not formatted up in an XML type language, it's just produced in a list. And now to mount that up to the same folder, we do dism /mount -wim /wim file, and then again no spaces, path to our file. Index image #1, and then provide it with a directory to mount to, no spaces again, and enter. It goes through there with a slightly different progress bar, and that's completed. If we go and look in our folder, it looks exactly the same. Just remember that with dism though, we can now perform extra operations on this image, whereas with image X we can just mount and unmount the folders as they stand. So what other sort of stuff can we do with that? If we have a look, with dism there's a notion of an online versus an offline image. Dism can apply against the currently running operating system, that's when something runs online, or offline, which is what we've done just here, where we've taken our image and opened it up so it's not actually running. You can modify drivers, so we can, if we've got a bunch of inf files downloaded, we can inject them into the image. We can inject patches either in .msp format or patch applications that are run with MSI. We can add or remove Windows features. We can inject unattend files, and we can also apply any of these changes against Windows PE as well. So for managing drivers with dism, drivers have to be provided in a .inf file format. You can't install anything that's an exe or any of these fancy driver install packages. However, you might well find if you extract some of those, you'll be able to get the actual raw inf files out. Switches that you need to know, we've got /get driver info. That gives you a list of drivers that are currently installed inside your image. We've got /add driver, and then you provide the driver path. You've got the option to recurse, which means it'll go through all the subfolders of the folder that you tell it to in your path. Quite a handy one for 64-bit systems. Because Windows 7 requires drivers to be signed in 64-bit, we've got this /force unsigned, which does what it says. It forces the application of unsigned 64-bit drivers. And then we've got the option to remove drivers that are published into an image. So to see that in action then, this is back on our reference machine. We've got this folder C drivers, and in here I've placed some Epson printer drivers. If you look, there's quite a set of nested folders in here, but ultimately we get down where we've got these inf files, and these are the drivers that we're going to hopefully install into our image. So take that right back to the top. Right, so to see that working, we should do dism slash add dash driver, and then the path, and then recurse. And it would probably help if I told it what image we were looking to put that into. So slash image. That's just the path to our mounted WIM file. Just let that run through. And you can see that's picked up on all the multi-language drivers. You'll also notice that it's applying the x86 version of those down the side here. And then it's also tried to install the 64-bit drivers here. So now we should be able to run the get drivers against our image and get a list of all the third-party stuff that's been installed. So that would be dism slash image get dash drivers. And you can see in here these are all the files that we've just installed, our Epson printer drivers. You could, on that get driver information, use the slash all switch, and that'll chuck out information about all built-in Windows drivers as well as all third-party. By default, it only shows you third-party drivers. So hopefully you can see how that would be quite handy for keeping your image files up to date as and when new hardware comes out. If you get a new type of machine, you don't necessarily need to re-image it, you just need to make sure that the image contains all the right drivers. So next we're going to look at some features for managing the actual operating system. We can install patches, or they're commonly referred to packages in DISM language. They're .msu files, which is Microsoft Update file format. You can download these either from KB articles or from around the internet. The ones I'm going to use, I'm going to download from the Windows Update catalog. That's a website very similar to Windows Update, but you can just basically go and browse by KB or operating system to download patches as and when you need them. You can also install programs as long as they're in .cab file format, and you can then customize certain features, the main one being customizing the Windows localization settings and also some of the Windows components, so things like being able to add and remove FreeCell or Hearts or varying other Windows programs. So for managing packages in our operating system, there's a few switches here. We've got get-packages. Hopefully you're getting the idea about how these switches work. That will give us all the information about the currently installed or pending packages in the operating system that we're looking at. Get package info will tell us some information about the package that we're about to put into our operating system. Add-package is the one that will actually do the installation, and remove-package will remove any that are pending. Worth bearing in mind that you can't remove MSU packages, it's only cab files that you would be able to uninstall. So back in our test server, I've created another folder called patches, and in here is KB977165, which is part of the latest Patch Tuesday cycle for Windows 7. If we have a look in here, we can see we've got two components. We've got an XE and an MSU. It's this MSU file that we're concerned about. That's the actual meat of the package. That's what we're going to push into our image. So to do that, we're going to use the command for dism space slash image first of all, then slash add package, and then package path. Again, all of these without spaces. KB977165, and they're not having spaces is a real pain because it means you can't use tab to complete your paths. Click OK on that, and it's run through and completed successfully. So to have a look at the status of our image, we do dism slash image and then get dash packages. There's a few options or sub-options for these get packages or get drivers. You can do slash format and then either a table or a list view. Makes it slightly easier if you've got lots and lots of things inside these images rather than it spewing them out in a huge long list. So if we have a look in here, you can see there's quite a lot of stuff that's already pre-installed in here. Most of these are just patches or language packs that were part of the original installation. But if we look down at the bottom, there's our KB 977165, and you can see that its state is currently installed pending. Because this image is offline, you obviously can't actually do the installation into the Windows 7 image file. So all DISM is actually doing here is it's staging those so that the first time this machine's booted, anything that's got this installed pending state will actually run through and be installed. It's quite important remembering that because there's actually a back out switch that we can use. So if we've gone and made all sorts of changes to our image file and it doesn't boot for whatever reason, we can come back and strip out anything that's got this installed pending state. So next is actually managing some of the features of the OS. Again, a whole bunch of switches here: get-features, get-feature-info, enable feature, disable feature, and then this is the one I was just talking about, /cleanup image. This switch allows you to revert any pending actions, so if you've made lots of changes, your image won't turn on, won't start. This will help you recover it and get it back to a state that it's known to be good in. So let's have a look at the features of this operating system. So we do dism/image get-features. So you can see that's completed. We've got all sorts of stuff in here. If we have a look a little bit further up, we've got Media Center. That's currently enabled. I think right up near the top we should have things like internet games, chess, checkers, spade, those sorts of things. These are things that we're able to control and turn on or turn off for our installation. So we're going to do dism/image disable -feature media center. And that's come up with an error. That's because I need to put in /feature name. As I said before, DISM isn't exactly the most straightforward syntax in the world, but it does make sense when you see it written out. It's just hard to remember. There we go, and it's also case sensitive. So this time, let's enable a feature. Enable -feature /feature name Hearts. That should be the card game that's included. You can see this time we've got an error saying that this relies on another feature, in our case inbox games, that isn't enabled. So first we need to allow inbox games, and then our Hearts install should go through okay. There we go. Next thing you might want to change is all the language settings, if you haven't done that already with your unattend file. I'm not going to run through these actually demoing them. Hopefully by now you've got the idea of how the DISM tool and the language and the syntax works. For the sake of the exam, just familiarize yourself with what these switches are and the switches that we've covered so far, and also go and have a look on TechNet. There's some great examples of how you would actually use this stuff in the real world. So get international gets you the language of the current system. Then we've got set the UI language, set the system locale, set the user locale, or set the input locale. Or we can do set all international, and that just changes all of these four settings all in the one switch. And we've also got the ability to set the time zone. So for managing applications, we've got the ability to install .msp patches against MSI installed applications. If you've ever used MSPs or MSIs from the command line, you'll know there's all sorts of horrible GUIDs that you need to provide in order to specify what package you're talking about. We've got switches check app patch. That will tell you if a patch applies to an application installed in your image. Or you can do get app patch info, gives you the GUIDs for the patch and tells you what product codes it's expecting. Get app patches, get app info, and get apps. Again, similar to what we've been looking at before. If we run the get apps against my image, I've not actually got anything installed because it was just a vanilla Windows 7 installation. But you could well have, something like Office 2007 installed in there, and using the MSP files, you'd be able to apply those against your image. Again, in more detailed examples of this, have a look on TechNet's pages. It's a little bit more information than you need for the sake of the exam. Just remember some of these switches and the basic syntax. With DISM, you can also apply unattend.xml files. So you remember from our previous course we went ahead and we created this auto-on-attend.xml based in Windows Sim. Well, using DISM you would be able to use the /apply on attend and specify the location for an XML file. So if something's changed, like your product code, or you want to perform additional tasks on your first run, that sort of stuff, you can create yourself a new on-attend file and apply it into your Vim using this apply on attend. You can also modify Windows PE based Vim image files. There's a set of commands specifically geared around looking at Windows PE. Things like changing the buffer size, how much RAM Windows PE loads up into, what drive letter it assigns to its own drive. By default, I think it's X that it loads itself up as, but you can control that sort of stuff with some DISM commands. Again, we're not going to have a look at specific examples because I don't really think we need to cover that. So the last thing we really need to do then is make sure we save the changes to our Vim. So we're going to do DISM / and if you remember from the start, it's onmount-vim. Mount is C/mounted. And then we're going to commit the changes, so save the changes that we've made. So you can see it's doing this as a two-step process. We've saved our image and now it's running through on mounting it. That's completed. If we have a look in our C mounted folder, it should all now be empty. So a quick summary then of the things we've looked at today. We've talked about how to manipulate the Vim image format, either using ImageX, which is just a straight open the file, save it back, or DISM, which allows you to actually drill into some of the features. Remember that with DISM you can do things against the online, as in the currently running operating system, as well as against an offline operating system, so that would allow you to do things like compare and contrast installed packages or installed patches. We've discussed how to modify the operating system, either by applying patches, by applying operating system patches or application patches, by changing the Windows features that are enabled by default, and also how to save that image back. Some quite complicated things that we've covered there. I hope you followed me through some of the examples. If you're unsure about any of it, the best way to go and do this is to install some of the tools yourself and have a little bit of a play around. Also follow the TechNet articles that will be posted in the accompanying web page that you've watched this video from. Well worth going and having a look there. And just bear in mind for the exam, don't get too hung up on all of this in too much detail. As long as you can understand what is going to be a correct syntax or what the correct commands might be, that should get you through. As always, please leave me some feedback at www.bibble-it.com, and hopefully we'll be with you for the next video soon. Thank you very much.